but I
All
don't.
right, well, it's 7:08. We have a quorum, so we're going to bring the meeting to order. We have our usual first two administrative items before we really get kicked off. The
The
first,
meeting is being recorded.
oh, yeah, I heard the announcement.
I
Did it
just
not?
wanted to announce
Okay.
it.
Okay. Now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the first is to approve the minutes from our last board meeting, which was on November 22nd. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting? I see a motion from Warren. Is there a second? I see a second from Rebecca. Is there any discussion of those minutes? Lynn, discussion?
Yeah, I sent something in. I got the draft of the minutes late today, so I don't know if I missed and been being sent out for earlier or not. But I found that under the discussion of CA leadership, that it just gives one sentence. The board discussed CA leadership, and I think it could be a little more specific than that, knowing that we can't say anything that would go beyond the bounds of what we can legally do. But given that by my count, we had 6 different entries about roadways, full paragraphs, a couple of full paragraphs, several full paragraphs, and then this one little sentence, the CA board discussed issues related to CA leadership. And considering it's a big issue in the county and is even being discussed in our neighboring jurisdictions, I think it deserves a little bit more than that without violating any privacy or personnel issues.
Well,
So I sent something actually to Amy and also to Sandy and Jonathan, but it was late today because that's
You want
when-
me to pull it up?
Oh, okay, I just saw it. I hadn't checked emails in the past hour or so.
and I'm open to changing it. I just think it should be a little more, considering it's an important issue.
I'll
So
pull it up in a
The
second.
proposed sentence is within the bounds of what is legally allowable. Board members and the OM Columbia Council representative discuss broad issues pertaining to CA leadership. Specific questions raised by Ms. Engelke concern transparency, accountability, and possibility. You have other emails.
Yeah. Well, it was what Lynn said. It said Ms. Engelke's questions concerning. It wasn't what the answers were.
No, that's why I left any of that out, because that gets into, discussions that might not be really what we want to share with the whole wide world, given the sensitivity of what's going on.
I agree with Lynn. That's what I recall happened.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the minutes as amended? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. Okay, next up is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. All in favor, I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve the agenda? I have a motion from Warren. I have a second from Ginny. Any discussion of tonight's agenda? Okay, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. Okay, we are off and running. First, we have, as always, resident remarks. Any resident wishing to make a remark can use the hand raise feature in Zoom or wave at me like Paul is doing. You have up to 3 minutes to make your remarks. And I'll just call you in the order I see you. And the only one I see is Paul. So Paul, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, first of all, happy holidays to everybody.
thank you.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's always good working with everybody here. So, but I am not running again. I'm letting you know that right now.
Oh,
Ginny was kind enough to send the items that are being proposed for funding from CA, and one of them was electric vehicle chargers. I don't know whether you have voted to do all these items or not, but I am interested in the EV chargers and getting those in the neighborhood centers as is being proposed. And this is kind of a heads up for Jeremy. I don't know whether you've been paying for these totally with CA funds, but you are an HOA. and you should be able to get rebates from BGE for every single charger that you put in, because you qualify as an HOA. So I just wanted to pass that on. I don't know how you've been funding them in the past.
Thank you, Paul. I will check with Jeremy. I certainly hope he's very sharp. I certainly hope he's been doing that, but if not, thank you, because we're still in the budget process. So I just wrote that down.
Okay, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on EV chargers. The state, as you know, is going to be putting chargers along all interstates and US routes. And there's about 5 billion for all the states. But there's also another 2.5 billion that'll be given out on a discretionary basis. And I don't know how that's gonna be handled, but it's gonna be aimed at communities. So it may be something that CA may want to get involved in on a Columbia-wide basis, because nonprofits, as I understand it, will be eligible. So, or it may be going through the state. I mean, there's no notice of proposed rulemaking or anything on these grants yet. So I have to see how that plays out. So anyway, those are my comments.
Paul, I'm sorry, Jonathan?
Go ahead, Ginny.
Paul, would you mind sending me an email on that? 'Cause the Climate Committee is meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I'd like to bring it up with them and have them take a position on it, and also have the CA board take a position. So anyway, if you wouldn't mind sending me that in writing, I've copied down what you said, but that would be great.
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Paul. I appreciate your keeping on top of this.
Rebecca, did you have a question or comment?
Yep. Paul, I have asked several people and nobody can give me an answer. Is there a reason why there are no Tesla chargers in Howard County?
Let me think. I think why they didn't put them in Howard County is because they put a big bank of them down in Laurel, just off the interstate. And then Electrify America came in and put a huge bank of chargers at Walmart at 175, where the Walmart is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also additional chargers that are next to Costco. So, why Tesla didn't do it, I think, is because other people have already done it here. And
Well, businesses request the Tesla chargers. I was just curious as to if you knew of something that was preventing them from being able to put them.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, then I'm going to start sending my letters out. The other thing is, you said you're not running again, but I've seen you several times running on Thunder Hill lately.
Well put.
Paul running? No kidding. I am impressed.
I thought he said he was walking with weights on his wrist earlier. For this.
Well, sometimes I run too, but
Oh, okay.
mostly walking. So
I think I saw Paul passing me while I was riding my bike.
Bill?
A question, Paul, who was chasing you?
Bill, not nice. not nice.
no comment there. Well,
All right.
thank you all for hearing me out. And as I said, I'm sorry to leave this gay group. I have another meeting to go to. So
Well, have a nice night. Enjoy the
Yes.
meeting.
you too.
Have a
Happy
great holiday.
holidays.
Maybe
Happy
we'll see you
holiday.
Saturday
Thank
night
you
at the
very
other barn
much.
for the lights.
Okay, I will.
Oh,
Run down
good.
there. Thank you, Paul. Okay, was there anyone else for remarks? Well, there's only one other person in our audience today, so maybe not. All right, well, we are going to move on to old business because we did everything we could to avoid new business for the meeting before the holidays, where we're then taking some time off. So we had a couple of items of no, I'm sorry, one item of old business, and I thought someone from Delegate Terraz's office had offered to join, or she was
can
joining, but I don't see
join.
her.
She's had a meeting, so she's gonna hop on when she finishes her meeting. And I said, then we'll acknowledge her because I said we'll be going on till about 8:15 or 8:20.
Okay, well, there are two pieces of local legislation proposed in the state legislature by I guess the Howard County delegation that we talked about at the last meeting. I'll do the education one first, since that's not Delegate Terrazas. So one was dealing with education, and it would add 2 appointed Board of Education members to the Board of Education. The list of potential members would be proposed by the state delegation, and the county executive, I believe, would get to appoint 2 from the list. They would not replace any members of the Board of Education, is my understanding. So the board would go from 7 elected members to 9 members, 7 of whom are elected, 2 of whom are appointed. But it would also change the election process for members who are currently elected by Howard County Councilmatic District. It would change them to be elected by state senatorial district. And of course, not all state senatorial districts are entirely in Howard County. I was never able to figure out whether this, dilutes representation or enhances representation for different parts of the county, depending on how much of the state senatorial district is in the county. But that's the proposal. That's part of the hearing tomorrow evening. When we talked about this under new business, I had reported out that all the members present at our last education committee meeting were opposed to it. And obviously under new business, we determined that we would think about it over the 3 weeks between meetings and determine whether we wanted to take a position on that one. The other one is, of course, pertaining to election to not all HOAs, just the Columbia Association and the village boards. And of course, the Columbia elections are administered by the village boards. And it would require reporting of donations and disbursements by candidates, which of course, by definition, would also require that the villages come up with some way of I suppose, tracking, verifying, and sharing this information. So those were the 2 pieces of legislation that we talked about last time, as most likely to affect us either as a village board or as a broader community when it comes to the education one. I did start to sign up to get us a placeholder to testify. The testimony is tomorrow night at the George Howard Building. They opened the online sign up form at 6 last night. I logged in right at 6 and started to sign up. Unfortunately, I didn't complete the process of signing up because the form required that I not only put all of the information in that I'm speaking on behalf of OMCA, it also required that I click boxes next to the legislation saying what the position was. And I couldn't in any good conscience click any of those boxes because we didn't have a position at the time, and it would have created a record of a position even if we didn't show up at all. So I aborted that process, did not sign us up to testify tomorrow night. So my suggestion at this point would be, since at least the education one is a hot topic and there will probably be a lot of people speaking tomorrow night, that if we do take a position on these pieces of legislation, we submit written testimony to ensure that we're heard, because I think there is a time limit on testimony tomorrow night. And I don't know what will happen, to the people at the very end. Like if I were to sign up late tonight after our meeting, what will happen to the people at the very end if they don't get away? Plus, I just can't stay awake that long if it goes to the very end, unless someone else wants to. So that's the story on the potential for us testifying. My recommendation would be that we send written testimony at this point, since I didn't want to even put a placeholder position in on the board's behalf. So again, while we hopefully await Delegate Terraz's arrival to talk to us a little bit about the HOA related bill, why don't we start with discussion on the education bill? I think I pretty much stated my position at the last meeting, so I will sit back and look for hands and let the rest ask questions or have discussion. Lynn?
Yeah, my question is that, does this change the at-large members where we vote for, when we vote of what will it be? It will be, how many will be elected? Of the ones that are elected, will we still have the at-large people?
So there has been a lot of confusion about this, and if I'm understanding it correctly, it confuses me when I read it, but I saw some, chatter from one of the sponsors of this bill, and it sounded to me that the appointed members would not replace the at-large members. There would be 2 additional members appointed, but I'm honestly not completely clear because this was sort of this was sort of a surprise bill. The Board of Education didn't know this bill was coming. So there's been a lot of discussion and interpretation in the language of the bill. Sandy just had that website on the screen.
I can get it.
And this is where I'm confused because I saw one of the I swear I saw one of the sponsors say this is in addition to your elected members, but the bill itself. Let me share my screen.
I'll get it. I'll pull it up.
I got it.
Jonathan, never, listen, but verify.
Yeah, exactly. So if
It's
you can,
English. It's in plain English. We can read it and we should know what it says.
can you see my screen?
Listen to somebody.
Yeah, I had put
Yes.
mine
Yeah.
up too, but
So
I
it
see
says beginning in 2024, the 5, right? And anything bold in capital is what's changing. The 5 elected members shall be elected as follows. And then you get the senatorial districts. And then you get 2 appointed members,
Okay,
which brings me to the 7 that they have now.
right.
So
We don't get.
I
the
don't
at-large.
I don't see, and it repeats 5 elected members of the Board of Education.
It said it.
So
Jonathan, go back up. Keep
how
going.
far?
There.
Beginning.
Oh, wait, down a little. So number 1 says 1 member from each of the 5 councils, and then 2 says 1 member from elected from voters.
That's
3
being
says 2
deleted.
members.
That's deleted.
That when you see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's deleted.
The brackets.
The
Yeah.
large print is what's being, replacing the part that's being deleted. The current system is each of the 5 councilmanic districts. That's what you do now. When it has that around it, it's being deleted, and that portion within Howard County. So you have 3 Senate districts, okay? That's replacing the 5 councilmanic districts. Instead of 5 councilmanic districts, which would result in 5 school board members, plus 2 at large that you currently have, you will instead have 3 councilmanic districts that will suggest to the county executive 3 people.
Wait,
Okay?
no.
No.
Well, no.
Brackets means delete, right? So starting up at the very top, you can't see where I'm pointing with my mouse, but starting up at not at that part, where you were, sorry.
We lost it. Wait a minute. No.
I didn't mean the very top. Okay, so,
That's not it.
yeah,
So
so
it-
they're
it-
switching
that's not where we
7,
were.
so
It
they're deleting
deletes,
7
well,
to
no, but
5.
I'm going where I know where Rebecca was looking. They're
Right.
deleting 7,
Yeah.
replacing it with 5, and then
Okay, and
adding
then-
2 appointed.
Okay, and I'll go down a little bit. So then it says, so instead of the 7, that's deleted there, beginning in 2024, the 5 elected members shall be as follows: 1 member from each state senatorial district. So Ginny, you said there's only 3 senatorial districts
There are
instead
only
of
3 in Howard County.
5 councils. So then there's 3 elected from the senatorial districts, plus
Well, wait a minute.
this number 3 is not totally deleted. They're just deleting the Roman numeral, or the little 2 I's, and they're replacing it with the actual numeral 3. So you still have 2 members at large, but now instead of everywhere being divided into 5 districts, now you only have 3 being elected from senatorial districts.
wait a minute, let's read it.
No.
more
Yeah,
carefully. Okay, let's read it more carefully.
Maybe.
It says one member from a state senatorial district wholly contained within Howard County, which I think is Guy Cazone's district, 12.
Mhm.
I don't know why they're differentiating that versus, 13 versus
We have,
12
yeah, we
and
have
9.
13, 12, and 9.
Yeah, and 9 is part Montgomery County. 12 is got a whole delegate district in Baltimore County. So this is a little confusing here as to what they mean. I thought the county executive got involved in actually making the final selection. Where
Yes.
is that?
He
Yeah,
does.
but
That's
we're-
for the appointed
there.
members.
But we're
Next,
not
yeah.
there yet. But pause, because what you were just saying, go back up a smidge. So we've got one member from senatorial districts that are partially in Howard County, elected by the voters within the county. So there's some senatorial districts that are partly in Howard County and partly out of Howard County, but the part that's in Howard County, those people get to get for each of those senatorial districts. I don't know what senatorial districts are named by, so I'm going to call them 1, 2, and 3 are partly in Howard County. It doesn't say how many there are, but the math, it has to be 2. So we have 2 different senatorial districts that are partly in Howard County. So they each get 1 elected person. And then number 2 says 1 member from the senatorial district wholly in Howard County. So that you said is Guy Gazone's. So that's 1 more. So we have
3.
1,
3.
2 in number 1, 1 more in number 2, and then 3 here says 2 members at large. So we still have at large members.
No,
we just
that's deleted. I think that's.
no,
deleted.
no, just the part in brackets. So
So
it's just changing I into
Correct,
3.
correct, Rebecca. I think you're correct.
Yeah. So that'd be 1, 2, 3,
So
4,
I said
5.
I was going to wait and hear other thoughts, but let me share thoughts. If everyone, if this is creating confusion to the point that we don't even know how many people we're electing,
Mhm.
I don't think it's that
Oh, no,
confusing.
no,
I think
no,
we
it
just needed to
isn't.
read through it.
It isn't. You need to read 1, the 2 appointed members shall be appointed by the county executive, Howard County, from a list of candidates submitted by the Howard County delegation to the Maryland General Assembly, which would be 3 people. The executive will only appoint 2 of them.
2.
Right.
Yeah.
Each senatorial district gets 1. 2 of the senatorial districts are located in other counties as well, but 1 is totally located, which is Guy Cazone's District 13 in Howard County. But they will, if I read it right, they will submit 3 people. Jonathan, and Jonathan, okay? And then the county executive will get Jonathan, and he will only appoint 2 of those Jonathans, is the way I read it. So the county
No,
executive has more power, no?
couldn't the county
Yes.
executive, I could read it that
Well-
he could appoint 2 others.
No, wait a minute, wait.
no,
2
no.
appointed
What we need to separate. We need to separate. The people do not get to vote at all on the list that goes to the county executive.
Exactly,
The
Correct.
delegation comes up with their own list, gives it to
exactly.
the county executive, says, here's a list of, I think it's 3 to 5, 3 to 5 people, pick 2 and put them on the Board of Education. There is no public participation in that.
Where do you get the 3 to 5? 2 members are elected at large by the voters of the county. 3 are.
Number
Yeah.
2 here.
3 to 5.
3 to 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan, do we have any idea what precipitated this? What need is this? What problem is this solving? Or
So
meant to solve?
I don't know why we would change to state senatorial districts or whatever. The reason given for the 2 appointments is that the state is giving the local school districts, which are county based in Maryland, a lot of money under Kerwin Commission, and they feel that they should, have more say, influence, oversight, whatever it is, by putting 2 members on. Now, I don't even know whether this is happening in every county. I haven't heard that it is. It would make sense if this were a statewide initiative, but this seems to be local legislation for Howard County.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is. And that paragraph two, number two, I mean, under the list submitted by the county executive in accordance with this subparagraph shall contain between 3 and 5 candidates. That is extremely confusing because he only picks, in my opinion, reading this, 2 out of the 3 senatorial people, which
Mhm.
by the way, were elected by the voters, to be fair, in the senatorial district. So the voters did have a say there, right?
No, he doesn't
No,
get to
they
pick any of
don't.
those. No.
They don't. I'm sorry, they don't,
Yeah.
they absolutely don't. Excuse me, that's the whole idea, is that the voters really questionable what they did. So the idea is that somebody else will do it. So the senators will submit 3 in this, 1 in each in the senatorial districts. The voters, though, will still elect 2 at large. So the senatorial districts are replacing the councilmatic districts. It's as simple as that. Instead of having 5 in councilmatic districts, you'll only have 3 in senatorial districts that the senators will move forward. The voters will select 2 in number 3 at large. And
No.
then the county
The
executive,
senators, wait a minute, the senators don't move forward the senatorial district candidates.
they get moved forward to the county executive.
No. They can pick
No.
anyone. They can pick anyone.
I mean,
The Senate, see, and
what
this
I
is
said. They
the,
move it
so,
forward
so,
from
so
their-
let's stop. The way we vote for the Board of Education now is every 2 years, we have a Board of Education election.
Right,
This year, we just voted for the 2 at-large seats. 2
Right.
years from now, we will vote for the 5 councilmatic district-based seats. So Oakland Mills will get to vote in just part of that election. It'll get to vote between candidates who are running in councilmatic District 2.
correct, yeah.
If this goes through, we'll still elect the 2 at-large members like we did this year. But then when it
Yes.
comes time to vote for what I'll call the districted seats, we
You
will
won't have a
still
vote.
get to vote for only, part of that election, and it's the part in which we live, which will now be state senatorial district 13 rather than county council district 2. But we still get the vote. Whoever wins that vote goes and takes office. In the meantime, the delegation, so this would be the delegates and the state senators, will get together, pick 3 to 5 other people, not necessarily from their district, hand that list to the county executive, and then the county executive gets to appoint 2 of those to the board to fill out the 6th and 7th seats.
Well, where did the 3 to 5? I see the 3 to 5 here, but I thought it was supposed to be the senators would each nominate 1 from the senatorial districts. Where did this 3 to 5 suddenly come from?
No, it's been like that. Because the delegation gets together and comes up with 3 to 5. So,
So.
I mean,
so
one.
Short term, that means we get to vote for, we in Howard County get to vote for 5. Currently, we vote for 5 people, and then for the 2 people who are the at-large people. And so now, so that makes 7 people. There will now be 3 and 2, 5, and then 2 that are appointed. So it's quite a balance. I mean, we're losing 2 people from the elected people and gaining 2 people who are appointed.
Right,
But
the
also-
voters of Howard County, if this goes through, the voters of Howard County would only vote for 5 instead of 7.
But there's something else here too. When you have councilmatic districts, you have smaller districts. So
Well,
you
that
have
was,
more of a say in who's your representative, for better or for worse, and you can get rid of them if they're for worse.
And
But
you know them. Is a-
well, that's debatable, but depending on how late they file, et cetera.
okay, we're all talking over each other and Rebecca has her hand up, so I'm going to call Rebecca.
Thanks. Does anybody have a map of how the senatorial districts compared to the councilmanic districts? Because I've been looking on Google. My concern is that if I'm saying that I know all senatorial districts are not equal, but this doesn't seem very fair if we have 2 partial districts that are voting members and then 1 entire district only gets 1 member. That seems a little imbalanced. So unless, of course, the populations are such, I don't know how they're determined, but that doesn't seem very evenly distributed.
So there are maps. What I have not found, and I think I talked about this at the last meeting, I have not found anything that tells me the population of each senatorial district residing within Howard County. What I suspect, right, if we draw these districts well so that they can hold up to court challenges, these senatorial districts should be relatively equal in size across the state, which would say to me that if one is entirely within Howard County and others are partially in Howard County, there are fewer Howard County residents in the other two than in the one wholly within Howard County.
Yep.
We happen to be within the one that's wholly within Howard County. So if that's true, that means our votes would be in Oakland Mills would be diluted
Less.
relative to the other two senatorial districts. But
Absolutely.
I can't find data to back that up. But it's what I suspect. Otherwise, why would we draw senatorial districts that cross county lines if we weren't trying to balance populations?
Is there any reason
Yeah.
why the village boards are not writing to the delegation and asking for that information? Or the village boards collectively?
We could. I don't know if any other of the village boards
Talk about it.
have talked about it.
Well, there were several village boards that were really, or village CA reps that were not happy with this, but not a majority. They felt they didn't have time to deal with it in the short time we had on our agendas, so.
Lynn?
Yeah, I'm confused, but I'm thinking that if there's a senatorial district that is partially in Howard County and partially, say, in Montgomery County, and that senatorial district gets one vote, then do the people who live in Montgomery County, are they essentially voting for
No.
a school board member for Howard County? It's only these few people
No,
who are in Howard County?
it says I stopped sharing because I can't see all of your hands when I'm sharing because the screen's too small. It says the portion within Howard County of each state senatorial district that is partially contained within Howard County.
Okay,
And there's a lot of redundancy in those words, but what it's saying is it's the people who live in Howard County and in that senatorial district that would vote.
okay.
And that was a point I was making last time. I actually think it makes voting for these down ballot elections even more confusing
Mhm.
because your state senatorial district doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the county in which you live, but this is a county election.
Yep.
Yeah.
The county school board.
Oh,
by the-
I'm sorry. And Warren, I did not see your hand because I was changing screens. Sorry, Warren.
Yeah, I not only, the problem I have with this bill is not only are we losing influence going from 5 relatively small districts to the senatorial districts. We're also, so it's going from 3, the electorate of the county is picking 5 people
Mhm.
on the board. Now it's only 3, but our district that we live in gets even less influence because we have more people representing us.
Mhm.
So it's a lose-lose situation for us, as far as I can see. I don't see any reason to support this.
Yeah, and Rebecca, per your question, just to close the loop, and this is where the data, I can't break the data down further. I'm going to bring up another share. So this is the state GIS. Hopefully you can see this. So, Howard County is, here's Columbia. So Howard County is roughly with around here because the county borders aren't here. So here's Senate District 13. It has a total population of 131,054 people. And that's the one we believe is entirely in Howard County. So that's 131,054 voters, all in Howard County, all voting for one candidate. 12, which, clearly goes over into Baltimore, if not Anne Arundel. It looks like Baltimore and Anne Arundel, parts of it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
has 131,907. So, these two districts are roughly the same size, but, the county line is somewhere around here. So I don't know the population distribution, but geographically, half of it is in Howard County, half of it's not. Does that mean it's only 65,000 people? I have no idea because I can't find the data, but it's fewer than the 131,000 that are voting in 13, and then, 9 gets kind of rural, so 132.81. So all these state senatorial districts are within a few hundred in population of each other, but that goes all the way over to Clarksburg in Montgomery County. Again, I can't see exactly where the county line is, but, by my math,
Maybe even Carroll County there.
yeah, maybe even some Carroll County.
No. They got out of Carroll County and went into Montgomery
Okay.
County, which was a
Hmm.
smart move on their part. That's how they got elected.
Okay.
Team up.
So, from what I can tell, we have 3 roughly same size state senatorial districts. One has 100% of its votes concentrated in Howard County for one candidate representing it. The other 2 have fewer than that. So the power of your vote, if you're in District 13, is reduced by this. I just don't know by how much. Ginny?
We go back to Sandy's screen share on the bill? Because I have a follow-up question for Warren's question.
Oh,
Whoop,
that was my screen share. Hang on.
never mind. Okay.
Hang on. It's coming back. No, that's the
Alrighty.
agenda. Here's the bill.
I just think maybe the answer might be in this bill, and I'm not sure, but here's the question. Warren made a statement that each senatorial district will get 1 rep. I don't, let's read it carefully and make sure that's true, because how do we get to the point where the county executive, could the county executive, for example, this will never happen to Guy Cazone, let me tell you, but District 13, is it possible that nobody will be selected, that the vote is picked in District 13, because that moved forward to the county executive and he will choose only X number of people? He's not
Well,
going to choose.
nothing that the voters do affects the list that the county executive get. That's entirely made up by the state delegation.
All right, let me do that slowly again in terms of.
The
you're
voters-
saying
the voters have-
we're guaranteed 3 spots from the senatorial district, guaranteed those.
Correct.
The voters
Voters.
elect 3 from the senatorial districts.
Okay,
The
so
county
we-
executive has nothing to do with that. We vote. That's
So then the
that's
Senate-
democracy.
Then, all
So-
right, the senatorial that just replaces the districts, 5 for 3.
Right.
Then the senatorial thing will be this, I mean.
So this is where we have to stop saying senatorial.
the sen-
We elect 3 by senatorial district, then the Howard County delegation, and we have more delegates than we have senators. The whole delegation
Good point, good
comes
point.
up with a list of 3 to 5 people, doesn't need to be in their district, just 3 to 5 people from across the county. Submit that to the county executive,
And he picks.
and the county executive picks 2.
All right, so, okay. So it's just really, the political decision is there's no vote from the voters, no, on those 2 that eventually get elected. Is this a simple thing?
So the 2 that eventually get appointed, I would say we are 2 degrees removed from electing them. We elect our delegation, we elect our county executive, but our delegation and our county executive get together to figure out who those 2 people are. So we're 2 degrees from electing those 2 people, whereas right now we everyone in Howard County directly elects basically directly elects 3 members of the Board of Education, and Howard County as a whole elects all 7, right? Because wherever you live in Howard County, you vote for 2 at large, you vote for 1 in your councilmatic district,
Okay,
and the county as a whole elects all 7. The
All
way
right.
it is now, you would still vote for 2 at large, you would still vote for 1 in your state senatorial district. But because there are fewer state senatorial districts, to have a board of 7 people, 2 need to be appointed and rather than elected.
right, let's say, maybe you know the answer to this, or how close have some of these votes been, where it's been by 1 vote, something's been decided, or 2 votes, something's been decided?
Not by 1, but by hundreds in the councilmatic districts.
No, that was not I'm talking about when the Board of Education votes. I'm saying,
Oh.
what's the significance of 2 people being appointed as opposed to the voters electing them? How close have some of those Board of Education votes been? 1 vote can make a difference. 2 votes made a difference in a lot of those votes. No? Yes, maybe?
I mean, right now we have 2 schools getting renovated in the next few years, I think based on a 4-3 vote.
All right, that's my point. So do you want to elect those people, or do you want somebody else appointing the people when the votes on the Board of Education have been that close?
Good point, Jenny.
Rhetorical question, a rhetorical question. Forget
Good,
it.
good point.
I'll be quiet from now on.
Well, my personal feeling is we should elect as many as many people as we can elect. I don't really agree if this is if the argument is the state's giving a lot more money, so therefore the state should have more say in what these boards of education do. First of all, we have a Maryland State Department of Education. We have a Maryland Board of Education. They rather than the counties actually do govern these boards of educations. You can't, like Howard County can't remove a superintendent without the state weighing in. Howard County can't actually, I don't think, remove a Board of Education member without the state. So the state already has a lot of influence in what goes on in the counties, versus the county executive or the county council. So to me, the state has power because they have power of the purse already. And, it should be up to the people who are, living in the county, because by definition in Maryland, counties are our school districts, to determine who's running their school district.
Yeah, I agree.
Ginny?
I know I raised my hand. I said I wouldn't, but okay. Last point, what you were just saying, how many times have we gone down, many of us, and testified before the Public Works Board? Before other in the education department, how many? They make the final decision on these capital budgets, right? For schools, to a great extent. I mean, they can change things, they can refuse to fund things, they can do all sorts of things. So they have that power now. This is
Right.
not giving them any more. They have plenty of bloody power now under the current system. So I honestly do not get it. And I won't say anymore. I've said that before, but I really won't.
So if I had my way, I mean, I would say, I would say very simply, and I'll do this personally, regardless of what OMCA decides, if we decide anything, I would say, no, this turns a relatively simple democratic process into a more convoluted, less democratic process, and it's fixing it appears to be a solution looking for a problem. Unless something is broken, leave it alone. And no one has communicated that anything here is broken. Lynn?
So I agree with you. And also it's my suspicion that there's a concern that school policies will go in a way that some people don't like. And so they want to be able to have kind of a veto power by having appointed members to the school board. And because who are they going to be beholden to? They're not beholden to the voters, they're beholden to the county executive and the state delegates that put them in office.
Yep, I agree.
I agree too. They already have enough ways to influence, especially with the funds.
Yeah.
Power to the people.
If I were quickly going to put together testimony for this, I wouldn't even get into any of the details, any of the confusion, any of the dilution of votes. I would just say the people should have the vote. Councilmatic districts are contained entirely within the county. They're easy for people to understand. Don't make this less democratic. Don't make this more confusing. Leave it alone. It works fine.
Yeah.
End of story. Very short and sweet.
Amen.
Yeah, perfect.
Maybe an hallelujah in there too.
Bill?
I move that we put in writing that we want Delegate Watson and Senator Lamb to withdraw the bill, period.
Warren?
I'll second
Is that
that.
a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0, 5, 0, 0. Okay. I could put something together real quickly and mail it in. I just got an email from one of Delegate Terrace's assistants saying she just got out of the event she was in, so they're hoping she can join us soon. But we may as well start talking. So of course, the other bill is the bill that would require the receipt and disbursement disclosures for candidates to village boards in the 10 villages in Columbia, as well as candidates for the Columbia Council reps, all of which, of course, would be administered by the village offices, presumably, because the villages administer the elections for both their boards and for the Columbia Council. I have thoughts on that as well, but I'll open it up. Warren?
Does this mean that even if you don't have any expenses and you don't have anyone giving you any money, you still have to submit a report that says that happened? So does that mean everyone has to submit a report? The way I read it, it sounds like that.
I would guess. I mean, I don't know, because it's going to be up to the
Ben, can you
villages
go
to figure
somewhere
out how to
else?
do this. Sandy, you're not muted. It would be
Okay,
up to
well,
the.
I just told my husband to go somewhere else because I can't.
From what I can tell, it would be up to the villages to figure out how they're going to do this. And honestly, I don't even know how the village's compliance with the law would be evaluated, and what the penalties would be if someone thought the villages weren't doing a good enough job. Like, the way I read it, a village could just say, if you have nothing to report, then a no response is the equivalent of a negative response. Another village could say, we need a statement from every candidate saying, I received nothing, I dispersed nothing. But it doesn't specifically say that, from what I can tell. Ginny, and then Lynn.
Yeah, could I suggest that we table this until the delegate gets here, because we're asking questions that she really should be answering instead of us trying to assume what the answers are. I think it'd be beneficial, one, if she heard the questions, since she's
Yeah,
sponsored the
we can do that.
legislature, and move on. And if she's here in 5 minutes, we stop whatever else we're talking about.
Yeah, because the worst that happens is it cuts you off or me off, and everyone would cheer for that either way. So
Yeah, right. I'm willing to be cut off. Put me next, I'll be cut off.
all right, let's do that. Okay, so let me
That
move
wasn't
on.
nice, Jonathan. Yeah.
Let's see, board chair report. Actually, not a couple of interesting items. I got a message from Mike Elser, who is the representative from the Stevens Forest PTA, who co-signed that letter that Warren and I sent to the school area superintendent, the police, and traffic. And I don't know, I can't imagine the county acting this quickly, but the police sent a representative to the PTA meeting this week. And the police informed the PTA that they were going to be adding a crossing guard at the other crosswalk
Oh, really?
at the neighborhood center. So now there will be a crosswalk at Kilimanjaro, a crossing guard at the crosswalk at Kilimanjaro, a crossing guard at the crosswalk at the neighborhood center, as well as the tunnel under the road.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, which I mean, I think that's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily stop people who still choose to dart across the road, because the crossing guards can't run up and down Stevens Forest Road and say, stop doing that. But it gives a third what I'll call controlled option for getting across that
I
road
have
to
a
the school.
question, Jonathan. So they already have one at Kilimanjaro. Is there currently one at the tunnel?
No, but you can go under the road, so you don't.
No, so they're
You're
adding
totally safe
a
going through the
second
tunnel.
location. They're adding a
Yeah, at the
second,
neighborhood center.
right? And there in Kilimanjaro will
Yeah.
have,
So what I'm saying is, you now have 3 locations where
Right.
you don't have to be worried about having your children in the road by themselves. You have crossing
Oh.
guards north and south of the school, and then you can still, of course, go under the
Well, that
tunnel
would
where
be
you don't need a
great.
crossing guard. Ginny?
yeah.
Yeah, when I've driven that, I've seen 2 to 3 crossing guards
Yeah.
at Kilimanjaro, not one.
No, there's usually 3.
Oh yeah, they usually have 2 or 3. Yeah.
Because
So
they
I
have to
think,
cross in different directions.
how many directions could one move?
But they have to block off each side of Kilimanjaro, and then Stevens Forest is a big crossing.
Okay. Never mind.
I wave to them every morning.
I-
Sometimes I've seen two, but
Yeah, I was trying to
Sometimes.
remember whether 2 or 3.
When
Oh,
Warren and I were out there, it was 2. It
yeah,
was 2 that afternoon, yeah.
yeah, it used to be,
Oh, that's just great news, I think.
probably 2.
Well, you know, whether they can't do anything about the problem, they could report it. They could kind of every day be sending an email to the police saying, hey, this is dangerous, you know, they could be helpful on that.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
they
I
are.
don't have a lot of detail. All I know is there will be a crossing guard assigned to the pool. I don't know how many, at least one. Of course, that's, you can only cross one road there. There's not an intersection there, so maybe they don't need as many. And it will be effective January 3rd, so the first day the kids are back
Oh,
from winter
great.
break.
That's great. That is great.
That is great news. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think that's really all the recent news I've received. So I will make up some time here and send it over to Ginny.
Well, before you send it over, is there any news on Columbia Point as to who the new owners are, what their intentions are, blah, blah, blah?
Not their intentions, but Lynn and I started doing some research, and Lynn was able to trace the LLC and figure out who the new owners are. It looked very, Lynn, you want to give some more details? It looked very positive to us.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was written up in Baltimore Business in the Baltimore Business Journal. And they, the new owners, I can't remember the name right now, but
I'm getting it.
yeah, the new owners in the article said they were really excited to buy Columbia Point because of its great location and proximity to the new downtown, and that it was really kind of perfect for people who wanted to be able to take advantage of things within easy walking and biking proximity. And it sounded very, very upbeat on the whole thing. Okay, there it is. Biz Journals is the link. Jonathan just put it in the chat. And the name of the owners. They have properties all over the place.
Are they private,
Mhm.
not government?
Oh, you know what, Lynn? They've moved it to subscriber only. I can't
Oh,
load the
really?
article.
Oh, darn.
Yeah,
Oh,
let me see if I can
darn.
find it somewhere else.
While you're looking, someone called me, before the sale, they were talking about it, and they said they were very, here's Jen, I'm letting her in. They were looking at creating a real path from the apartments to the path for the connection and anxious to make improvements. But we asked for that path for a while now because they didn't like the way it looked as just dirt going up, dirt path. So that was encouraging. And then I also let them know for whatever changes they have to let us know. They sold it for a pretty penny, so.
They sure did.
Yeah, I think, is it 74 million?
Yep, yep, a nice turnaround.
It's a lot more than they bought it for. I know
Yeah,
that.
It's like,
47 million they purchased and then put in about 11 million in improvements, so that's.
yeah, it's like a $30 million profit. I mean,
But
it's
they did a great job on the improvements. You got to give them credit.
Yeah, 78 million.
Oh, here's Jen. She's going to interrupt mine, Jonathan. You got through.
Oh, thank goodness.
I'm not here
Hi.
to, I'm not here to interrupt. I can wait.
Oh, no, it's a joke. It's an in joke. We're kidding. Well,
No,
So-
we had actually tabled discussion of the legislation, and I was giving the board chair report, and I was just about to hand it to Ginny. So you actually came in at a perfect time because we were
Oh, good.
transitioning on the agenda anyway. So we will back it up to old business. First of all, thank you for offering to join and for joining us. I know you had
Anytime.
other commitments
anytime.
tonight. And obviously we were going to be talking about the proposed legislation affecting elections to the 10 Columbia villages as well as the Columbia Council. And, probably there are several questions, and we're happy you're with us because we figure who better to answer the questions than
I appreciate
than
that.
you. So actually what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna open it up for discussion because I know Warren had started to pose a question before you got here, and I'm sure there are a lot of others. So Warren, did you want to go ahead and restate that question you had?
Sure. Thanks for coming. My question was, of course, it's all about me, right? But what do I have to do now if this bill passes? What would I have to submit a report to the village that said I didn't spend any money and I didn't collect anything or whatever? I mean,
Yeah.
how does
and-
that work? How's that process work?
Well, first, the village is gonna have to pass something first, but as soon as they do, it could be as simple as scribbling on a notebook piece of paper. I, Warren, received no money in this election and therefore spent none. I mean, that it really, like, you can write that as complicated or as simple as you want. I talked to the head of that section of the Board of Elections, and he's really more than happy to work with the village managers or the village, whoever in the village is taking lead and help draft something. But really, it could be pretty simple, especially if you're not bringing in any money. But unlike if you run for county council, you run for state delegate or Board of Ed, you have to get a treasurer, you have to open an account, you have to do all that. This is not going to require that whatsoever.
Lynn,
Jen, can I ask why?
you didn't raise your hand, Sandy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lynn?
I didn't see a
I just
hand.
have a quick question. Is this intended just for the election process and contributions, or is it intended to disclose any potential conflicts of interest among people who might be serving? In that we all get to vote to a certain degree with, we have fiduciary, responsibilities and abilities to hire, fire, so forth.
Right. This does not require that. I'm interested to find out if your ethics rules do or how that works, but I see Jenny doing this. But this doesn't touch on conflicts.
Okay.
It really just it's a transparency bill, so people could make their own decisions about whether they think you have a conflict, or your ethics rules will cover when you have a conflict. I don't know if you do by village board.
Right.
Jonathan,
Now,
may I
wait a minute,
respond
Sandy
to
did
that?
put her hand up this time. So
I'm
she
wondering.
doesn't get to jump ahead of Lynn because she's retiring, but she does get to get called on because she put her hand up this time.
So I'm just wondering why we need this bill as village. Is there a problem that we have? Or is this, I just
Right.
think
So
we're a little homeowners association.
we are, well, let me say this.
Not little, but it seems
So
like
little.
we're getting
Yeah.
mandates from the state for RHOA. And I wonder why what's the prompt for?
What's the prompt for
writing
it? Well,
this?
I mean, I think 2 years ago was really the prompt for it is not intended to stop anybody from donating or spending money on the election. Although interestingly enough, you guys don't have any limits on those contributions. We do. Like one person or one entity can't give us more than $6,000. But this doesn't do any of this. This just says we need transparency. And it really came out of, I mean, you've been around in this probably as long as I have. And maybe, I don't know exactly how long you've been in, but I've known you for many years. And so you guys know the elections. The elections, generally speaking, people don't spend a lot of money. I don't know if in Oakland Mills they have, but like, at least in King's Contrivance, I think one person once spent $175, and I can remember exactly who that was, because that was like out of sync with everybody else. And I know sometimes in Long Reach, I've been told they buy pencils and hand them out at the village center or what have you. So, but 2 years ago, a lot of money was put into the elections. And estimates are around $100,000.
Oh, wow.
I've heard them from 50 to 100 to more. But even just looking at the number of mailers, I don't know how many mailers you all received, but I received 4 in Kingston Trivens. I know Wild Lake received around 6. So it's just money pouring in. And, I think it's not about who gave money in that election. I think that's really important. That's just who did that year. It could be anybody. It could be anybody, it could be outside influences. I mean, this may have been, developers and other people in the county, but it could also be somebody coming from outside the county that has a different interest. And, CA floats bonds, and CA runs open space and owns lots of land. And so there's a lot of reason why CA, and I frankly wanted to do it for other large HOAs, but have been given the message through leadership in the state that they wanted to start with Columbia instead of trying to drag others in. And frankly, it's really hard to figure out who those others are. I spent a lot of time trying to do that last year. So that is the impetus. It was 2 years ago. It just sort of, it wasn't because I want to stop that, because this doesn't stop anything. It just says, gosh, we need a little transparency around that.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
You're welcome.
Ginny, and then at some point I have a question, but I'll go last.
Yeah, okay. The only concern I have, Jen, in terms of Warren's question, his was around, how much money I get and that I have to declare it, but that's not the total problem. The problem in Rouse Project 2, to a certain extent, some people may have gotten direct money. We're not going to talk about that, but
Yep.
others, it was a lot of stuff was paid for, like the mailers, like the signs, like whatever. I mean, and I actually have the figure that Reverend Paige Getty told me when we met after the election. She wouldn't meet with me before, but she met after. That was 100,000, and she told me it was from a big developer, Howard Hughes, and Brad Canfield both contributed most of that money. So that's a quote from her.
Right.
And I was glad to hear her being so open and transparent, because we had trouble getting that information. But how do you reach the point where they,
Right.
I mean, you're talking about a lot of money that
It's a lot of money.
never happened before in to any great extent. It
Right.
was unbelievable.
So what I would say about that is two things. One, just because they paid for it directly doesn't mean it's not a contribution. It's a contribution if they coordinate with a candidate, right? So if they talk to the candidate and they said, we're sending out a mailer for you, it doesn't matter if they directly paid the printer and the mail house, that's still a direct expenditure to a candidate. In terms of independent expenditures, I had a long conversation with the Board of Elections. I think it was yesterday, is today? No, I can't remember. It was either yesterday or the day before. I can't remember what day of the week it is, Tuesday. So it must have been yesterday. So I had a long conversation with him because he said, well, I don't know how we can do independent expenditures. And I was like, well, that didn't make any sense to me for the longest period of time. And what he said is the reason we can't is because you don't have any limits on how much can be contributed. So what independent expenditures are generally for is for if somebody's maxed out to me with $6,000, now they can continue to spend money on me. I don't have a lot of that, by the way, but they could continue to spend money on me by putting out a mailer that I have I don't know anything about. I'm not part of the, messaging, not part of any of that. But he said what complicates this, and I'm interested in your opinion, but do we want to start adding in the same type of monetary restrictions that we have on the state for the state officials and county officials and Board of Ed? I mean, that's a question. And so I didn't understand that until yesterday. I really intended to just add independent expenditures. But he said, for the most part, if they're having any conversation with the candidates, those need to be reported as expenditures anyway. And there won't be as much need for it. So, and if you look at what was spent last time, the $100,000, what happened is we have no idea, because there's no reporting requirement. We have no idea how that money was spent exactly. Like, we could see the mailers, but we don't know, did they give it to the candidate and the candidate paid for it? Did they pay for mailers and not tell the candidate? There's a lot we don't know. So I'm not sure. I think this in some ways addresses it already, because if they're doing any coordination, it's reportable. But I'm not sure how we address it otherwise, unless you guys are interested in us doing a monetary limit. It would be very difficult to separately. You said, like, anytime you went after an independent expenditure, they could just say, well, we donated to the candidate.
Well, my final point is, you have candidates that say, hey, I didn't know anything about this. I was blessed with these signs along Snowden River Parkway and other places all over the place. I didn't pay for them. I don't know who donated them to me. I mean, really.
Right.
I don't know what you do about that. And
So this,
honestly,
I'm going to have a question related to this coming up, Ginny.
okay,
that
and the
might get at
other,
this.
last thing is timing. One of the problems with CA elections is people file in February, I guess, Sandy, and the elections.
Not
are
till March,
March.
like
Okay.
by mid-March.
So they're getting support before
Mhm.
building campaign funding that's, happens. And then all the stuff's being printed and all that. And by time when they declare, the voters may not even know that something happened other than common sense. When you start getting a lot of expenses
Right.
in the mail, you got to wonder. And then when you see it as a team thing, you got to really wonder. And signs with everybody's, individual, but all together, you kind of pick up on something's happening. But to really see that so-and-so really got X amount of dollars is, I'm trying to figure out how we get that message across to the voters in a timely fashion. So that's it.
So the timely fashion, I actually talked a lot with the Board of Elections last year about that and that's one of the reasons we were looking at having the villages create the rule on this. And that's because the Board of Elections doesn't know CA election timing, right? So you will know. So the way it works for us, and somebody correct me if they think I'm wrong on this, but we have to do annual reports, and then we have to do like a first pre-primary report, a second pre-primary report, a post-primary report, a pre-general, and then a post-general. So we're required to do multiple reportings, and the village could just as well do the same thing. They could say, you need to, when you file, say if any money has already been spent on your campaign, and report what you have in your campaign chest for that, and then required again, at whatever intervals you want to do. And I'm happy to work with you on that. But I think the good thing about having CA, the villages do that, is that you've been running villages for many years. I mean, village elections for many years. But I'm open to suggestions. I'm also open to the suggestion on the campaign finance. I mean, on the independent expenditure issue. But I really think it's going to require a limit, and that isn't something I had proposed so far.
Thank you.
Rebecca, and then Lynn.
I think partly you just kind of answered my question about that, and it seems to be open-ended because I'm not that familiar with how elections are financed and stuff. But if so-and-so, if Jonathan here is running for something and
Why have I been the
Ginny,
example all night?
because you just,
You're a good
Brigida, I'll
example.
say Brigida's running for something and Jonathan thinks she's just the kitten's meow, and he puts all those signs up and sends those mailers. How does that qualify for something that Brigida has spent if Jonathan's doing it on her behalf? And it sounds like if they've talked about it, then yes.
If
But
they've coordinated in any way.
But couldn't Brigida just say, no, we didn't ever coordinate?
Okay, well,
Yeah,
if
I'm just
that's true,
independently wealthy and I bought a bunch of signs that say Brigida Warren and she doesn't even know I did it till they showed up in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so if she said that and it's not true, that would be a violation.
And who would decide that? Who would investigate that or determine that?
That's interesting because right now, who would investigate it is the village. I mean, the issue is to keep the control with the villages, and it's something we can definitely have a conversation about. But the idea was not to put too much state control on this, to just require the transparency piece of it. Could there be more added to it? Yes. Could it be done this year? Maybe it won't pass that way, but I'm definitely open to working with you on that. I mean, it is a little odd that somebody could spend $100,000 on a campaign here, but only $6,000 on, a council race or a delegate race, or, I mean, and it's not that you have to have $6,000 to be reportable. It's reportable right away. It's $6,000 limit. So and you can look, I don't really get lots of $6,000 donations, but I could if somebody wanted to give me $6,000. If anybody here, like independently wealthy Jonathan wants, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's not a solicitation whatsoever. No, it is absolutely not. I will reject any check that comes out of this. So no, I'm just saying that I mean, it's odd that we don't have those limits, but when I started this last year, I didn't feel like there was an outcry about how much, but just that nobody knew what was happening. I mean, there were some people said they wanted certain people prohibited from that. I don't think we can prohibit certain people from contributing. I suppose through your ethics law, you could say if you got money from a certain entity, you can't vote on something, on particular things. But I think that the money as speech has been decided by the Supreme Court.
The first step is finding out anyway,
Right.
which is this. Okay, so the second question is, oh man, now what is it? I haven't read the bill recently this week. I read it before. Is there a minimum? Like for our village elections, you know, maybe if under $200, that would be totally up to us to decide, or anything over zero needs to be reported?
Anything over zero, but you can create the simplest process, right? If you just want somebody to, like, you could say under $250, you just have to sign an affidavit that says, I received less than whatever, and I received it from so-and-so. I mean, it could be as simple a process as you want. I really thought about that, but then like, what would that limit look like in a village if I mean, like I said, in King's Contrivance, and it's been some years, maybe people have spent more, I don't think so, that 175 stood out. So if putting 175 into the election, and it had an influence, he won. It wasn't a problem that he won, but just he won by just coming in with money. I'm just afraid, like what number would we pick? Would we say under
anything over zero, right? Like
yeah,
$50,
but I mean,
because most of us don't spend anything.
Right, but on a report, like in terms of a report, we could all write a report for ourselves and say we received no money towards this election. Like that's it. It's not even, I mean, you could just email. If that's what you guys decide as a process, you could say, all you have to do is send us an email if you're under a certain amount. But I really kind of weighed that a lot. I know with the cities, so this also came out of me understanding that cities are not required to have reporting either. Some cities create their own, but they're not required to. So I'm also going to put a statewide bill on that. And they wanted the minimum to be $20,000. And I was like, $20,000. Like by the time you give me $20,000 in a small town, like I already have enough money to influence the race. Like I can mail it to the small town 4 times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like on my council district, I can mail the whole thing in for 9,000, 20,000, a small town. You can do the whole town.
Right.
Multiple times.
You can take them out to eat a couple of times during the.
Lynn?
Right.
Oh, sorry. Lynn, and then I get to ask a question before you go again, Sandy, unless someone who
Okay.
hasn't spoken raises their hand before me.
Yeah, my question is, I can totally see the desire to do this and the need for it. I think it would be very helpful when we're talking about election to the CA board, and then by virtue of that to the CA council that controls, you know, hundreds of thousands of acres of ground. I don't know how many actually, but I just threw that out there, and millions of dollars of the budget and all of these facilities. I mean, there's a lot of reason why someone might want to influence that vote, but why members of the village boards themselves? I mean, why include the village board members?
Because that's a good question. I think we saw the same issue with money going into the village boards. And I know you guys, well, we did that last time. I can name candidates, but I won't right here.
Went right by me. Nobody offered me any money.
Yeah, I do know several people, which I'm happy to talk to you about offline, that got money. But I mean, maybe this is my bias as a village board member, a former village board member for years. I feel like the village boards, and at least when I was on, had influence over what was going on in CA, like through meeting with their rep who was there, or the Columbia Council rep or board of director member. I mean, it is less of a reason than the others, but I really firmly believe that given that money was put into that as well. And it's also, I mean, a lot of times members are your sort of next board members, right? So they're,
I get it.
yeah,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sure.
So I actually had oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Real quick. First of all, Jen, thank you for the room background. It's great. I love it. Okay. And-
Oh. Do you see my ceiling too?
Oh, yes, clouds. I
Oh,
saw
nice.
that.
Very
Sky,
nice.
We painted
absolutely.
those when my kids were little.
Group, beautiful. Secondly, thank you for taking on this bill, this issue, because I feel personally, a couple of years ago, a corporation almost took over CA and began to have access to the open space and began developing open space, period, end of story. So thanks for taking this on. I know that the issue for us will be the logistics, the details, the process of how do we do this? I like that you want to keep it local within the village, control local, excellent. We're kind of faced with, okay, we've never approached anything like this.
Yeah.
How do we do this is the issue. And for me, it's like, okay, how do we do this? It's going to take a lot of time and energy on our part to
Right.
do consideration. We might come up with something that is extremely simple, but we're going to need some work and some background on how to
Yeah.
go about this. But thank you for taking this on, raising this issue, because
Can I
my opinion is we almost lost a good part of open space in Columbia a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I comment on that before you ask another question and just say that I can even build it into the bill that in fact, he gave me some language, the head of campaign financing for the Board of Elections. He's more than happy to meet with every village or the villages together. He's happy to give a proposal to you. The question was whether to build that proposal into the legislation and mandate it. And I thought it was better to let you guys make that decision. And also, you know, with the complication of like, what's your cycle? Like, I think some of them are on 1 year cycles. Some of you guys are on 2. I don't know what you guys are on 2 year.
For 1 year.
You're on 1 year. Okay. Kings is on 2. I mean, there's all sorts of different variations by village. So he could work with you to do that. I don't think this should take you a lot because he could literally write you something and send it to you if that's what you want. You know, form for under 50 and over 50 or something. You know what I'm saying? I do understand the anxiety about that though, because if you've never done that before, like where do you begin? And, you know, many of you haven't written your own reports for like state or county level. So you haven't seen lots of them written or know how to do them, but I think that's a pretty easy thing to be done. And he gave me some language put in there that upon request, the director of finance for the, I can't remember exact title, but for the Board of Elections will advise, and I can't remember the word. I have to find the language that he gave me, but it was something to sort of give you more assurance that it shall provide technical expertise upon request. So can assist, he also gave me can assist or help oversee the drafting, but upon request, right? So my goal is for it to be, I mean, I've worked with villages as a member and for many, many years. And I really, especially if you've got somebody retiring, don't think you want a new person trying to figure all this out. Is that the case? You have a new
Well,
person?
yeah, but when's it effective, this bill?
Okay, so that is a good question because generally speaking, bills are effective either on July 1st or October 1st, which is obviously after your next election.
Okay, that's good.
That gives me a little sense of nervousness because I do think there's involvement already, but that is what it would be unless we change it.
Okay.
Jen, do you think you could add in there something that would not allow Sandy to retire until we have this set up?
I am 100%
Yeah.
behind that.
Okay,
It's a
All in
greater
favor?
Then you've
incentive.
got my vote.
It's a greater incentive for me to support this bill
so
for October
so
or
Jen,
July.
Yeah,
one of my questions was the very one Lynn asked about, why the villages, why not just CA, since the
Yeah.
villages don't own any real property and have assets as large as CAs. So I think you answered that. But you know what, we have this set up where the villages administer the elections for everything, and then CCR elects itself to be the corporate board of CA, and it's actually the corporate board that makes these big decisions.
yep.
So with all that said, what I guess what what can you do if this passes? What can you do to protect the villages? For example, if there's an election and if someone feels that the village just didn't do its due diligence and following up on one of these reports or anything like that, I guess since I guess the state board of elections really doesn't have jurisdiction because we're
Mm-mm.
private. So the only other recourse a resident might have is to sue under this law. And the village, my concern is that the villages aren't really equipped to do a lot of due diligence and investigation of whoever decides to be a candidate. So if I file something that says I didn't take anything, I didn't give anything, and then someone comes in and says, yes, he did, and we're now basically, we want to sue the village because we think you had an invalid election, you didn't do your due diligence, you just believe whatever he said. What happens to us then? I'm kind of playing this out and trying to figure out where it all goes.
I don't think they can sue you for damages. They may be able to say, get some injunctive relief and say you have to put me on the ballot. But I mean, I think that's a fair question. I can follow up on that with you. I don't think there's I don't want to advise legally. I will talk to the drafters and to our legal folks, but the intent is not to put the villages in any position other than to publish, like to put out what they got, right? But I do hear you. I mean, the question is, how much does a village want to get involved in not seating someone if they fail to report? And I think that's up to you guys. Like, you could keep that as, we're just gonna trust that it happens. You could say we're gonna be a lot more strict about seating somebody if somebody on the board raises a suspicion that they've not reported at all. But I don't want us as a community to get all bogged down on that. But I don't want you to get in trouble for it either. So I don't mean like, let's not talk about it. I mean, we could make it as prescriptive as you want in terms of what exactly happens and how that happens. But from my perspective, the first step is to require the information. So you can't have candidates say, I don't have to tell you where my money comes from. There's no requirement for me to do that. And so my hope is that will move us in a direction of people reporting that. If people cheat on that, I mean, I don't have anything written in terms of that. And I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I have that if you don't file a report, you can't be seated, right? But if you do file a report, I'm not sure if the community wants to get into an analysis of whether their report was full and complete. I wouldn't think so, but I'm open to that idea. I think part of it is just having the requirement as a first step to people not being able to say, I don't have to report. Because that is when this started, as I heard people saying, I don't have to tell you where my money came from. That's not, there's no rule about that. And I was like, we can fix that.
Right.
If that's the case. And it was just about transparency. So I hear you. I will check and make sure that it's not automatically going to be a problem for you, but the rest of it's up to you what you write in. And my suggestion would be that you accept the reports for what they are.
And I guess I'm sure you've talked to the legal people, but is it? I mean, since we are, basically private entities who happen to have what looks like public elections, but they're not. They're
Okay.
actually private elections among our members, you know, who
Right.
sign on to our covenants and agree to live here. You know, so in many ways, we're not necessarily all that different in terms of, you know, how we're incorporated than other tax exempt entities, you know, whether it's
Mhm.
other HOAs, PTAs, boosters, you know, whatever is out there that you know, elects their board of directors from among their membership. Although we look a little different, I guess. Certainly at the CA level, we look a little different. But I mean, has legal already confirmed that the state can basically determine what the private entity, you know, puts into its election regulations?
So, yes. Am I positive nobody could ever challenge this? I mean, any law could be challenged and somebody could say, actually, the AG's office was wrong because they don't write, AG's office doesn't write law. But I did get opinion before I started the legislation from our contact and from the person who communicates with the legislature for the Attorney General. And after I drafted it, got them to look at it and say that it was constitutional for this to happen, you know, for this to go this way. So I can't promise you nobody would challenge it ever. At some point, the Attorney General's office sent an opinion that it was unconstitutional. I talked to them and I said, wait a minute, I got 2 opinions that were in writing that said it was constitutional, and they backed off. It was a little bit late last year for it because it already made people go, wait a minute. And I'm very confident in the advice that I've gotten. And I had talked to the Attorney General's office about it last year, and they kind of withdrew their ejection, but not in time. So I will check with them again, but I already have, I mean, I think I'm allowed to share it with you, but I can share the opinion with you.
Okay.
If I can't imagine why I can't. So I'll check on that. But if you want to see it, I can show you both before and at, like in the concept and then in writing, like once the bill is drafted.
Yeah. And if you're wondering why I'm asking these questions, I mean, you probably experienced it during your time in Hickory Ridge, but you know, as villages don't have legal counsel on staff, so anything that comes
Yes.
up for us, we have to go out and get
Yeah,
legal
no.
counsel.
You should do
And
that at all.
and CA's attorneys have always made it clear that they don't work for the villages. So even if there's something, you know, that jointly affects CA and the villages, CA's attorneys will probably take care of CA and leave the villages to figure it out. So I just,
Right. I don't want you
I
guys
want
to
to
be in that.
get some idea of, you know, while this sounds good in terms of
Yeah.
protecting the villages and the property owners, I also want to know, well, what could this potentially mean for the village's liability, since we have to administer the whole thing. And in many ways, for the big dollars, we're administering it on behalf of CA because we administer their election until they appoint themselves to the board.
Right. Okay. So I have that down as a question just to make sure that it's not automatically there. I think the problem would come in is if you guys decide you're going to start challenging people and say their report wasn't sufficient, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's a factual question. Do you have it or don't you have it? And how long do you give them to cure that anyway, right?
Yeah.
I have
And
a question about it.
yeah,
would state law supersede our covenants or articles of incorporations? So, because
Yes.
right now it's not in there about.
yes.
any-
And I have heard from Joel Hurwitz, and he would like me to add a sentence that say notwithstanding I forget the exact language, but we've already requested that. So it just says it explicitly. The drafter said he didn't think it was necessary, but it wasn't a bad idea. So we're going to put specific language on that.
Yeah, that's important.
I'm grateful to Joel for making sure I did that.
And then we have guidelines. I mean, those can be approved by the board every year, but it's
Right.
just by the board. So we
Yeah.
could put it in that easily, but not do it by changing our legal documents for like a year before it would even happen.
Right. Right. So I will definitely check on the legal liability piece, because I have no interest in you guys spending your money on trying to hire an attorney to make sure that there's no liability here. It's not the intent to place any liability on the boards, but I will make sure. And I'll get back to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Ginny?
Yeah, last point. One of my concerns is that if there is no enforcement section of a bill or something, it can easily be ignored or people just not quite tell the truth. And they figure they can get away with it. So it's almost like, why bother? I think there needs to be some enforcement. I personally think if somebody has lied and that can be proven, they should be removed from the CA Board of Directors.
So that is up to.
Well,
you
no,
all.
yeah, I mean, it should be up to the village boards to decide that
It
issue.
is,
But
it is up to the.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Here's a little catch though, because I mean, in
Well,
Oakland Mills, we had at least one situation that I'm aware of because I was on the board. So CA's position at the time, and I don't know whether CA would take a different position, is yes, the village elects the Columbia Council representative. Once the Columbia Council meets and appoints themselves to the CA board,
Oh, they can't remove
the
them.
village is out. It's up to CA to remove their members. And that's why I was sort of asking about, liability down the line, other issues. CA
That is
CA
the
has
whole
has
other
always
issue.
CA has always made it very clear that their board is independent of us once they make themselves the board, and we don't have any say once our election is over and that person gets seated on their board.
Okay, so because I've been here for 50 plus years, or maybe 50 years, something around there. I can, and maybe you all remember this, but there was a time when the Columbia Council continued to meet.
Mhm.
And they met as two different boards. They met as the Board of Directors and the Columbia Council. I personally was there testifying against it and telling them it was a bad idea when they stopped meeting as the Columbia Council. I remember the line was, well, the Columbia Council can order pizza or something like that. They kept saying. I think it was a mistake to personally, this is like kind of going off track a little bit, but I am upset to hear that that is the opinion that you're getting, and I could also look into that, but it certainly came up last year when one member was removed and not by its village. And that I think is very disconcerting to me as a resident of the village, but I don't know if you have interest in me finding out more about that or ever looking at fixing it, but it wouldn't be part of this bill. That is, I mean, I think you guys want to be pretty sure you're ready to certify that election as, they did file their report and you're okay with it before you send it over, but that is an interesting piece of it. And I think disturbing for other reasons.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, assuming, the current CA council feels the same way as the previous one, and I don't know because it hasn't come up for us again. If something came to light after we certified the election, if someone could prove that someone didn't report or misreported or something like that, basically what, if CA still has the same position now they had then, they would say, well, village, you can say oops, but it's for us to deal with now, and we'll let you know what we decide, but don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah,
that was basically the
right.
position on another issue.
Well, I would build that into your, like, how and when you certify it and how sure you are that, before they're seated. How long, I forget how long it is between the election and being seated on the board. Is that
2 weeks?
2 weeks? So you have
Yeah,
At most.
yeah.
at most, but I mean,
At most.
you'll know whether somebody's giving you a report or not. And the other thing is, this might not be a terribly satisfying thing, but to some extent, elections are good to the extent people care. So if you find out somebody was lying about it and that information and you guys decertify them, but CA keeps them on there, that would certainly be something I would think the residents of your village would care about a year later when they're running for re-election. But I think that leaves you guys kind of vulnerable that you elect somebody and then once they appoint themselves to another board, you then can't do anything with it. But that's a separate, I think Ginny would like to talk
All
on
right,
that.
Ginny, and last one, because I know we're way
Yeah,
over.
Jonathan, I'll be brief on this, but that the issue that you just raised, I would love you to consider asking the delegate to get a legal opinion, because I've been trying to get one for the last couple of years. There are instances where if you read 2/3, the board can remove an officer, which a CA board member is on the corporate board, with 2/3 vote. But on the other hand, we were told that in some cases that CA board votes, but it goes to the village board and they have to decide whether to remove. So we're getting both, and I've asked many times for the last couple of years for a legal opinion, and I'm never getting one as to what is the correct process. Is it the
Right.
village boards that make the final decision, or CA?
So-
And I would love to have
Okay.
delegate, well, whatever you guys want to do.
Well, I won't do it at your request. I might poke around and see, but if you guys do then want to, I mean, you can ask me, Jenny, yourself, or the board can ask me and write a letter just saying, can you look into this? But it's a very odd thing, because if you remove a member of the board of directors, but you guys still have a Columbia Council rep who's allowed to appoint somebody to the board of directors, then it's a kind of circular thing. So I'm not giving you my legal opinion on this whatsoever, but it's,
Well, I think the question is,
it
do you
makes me
take them off
uneasy
the
is all I'm
board?
saying.
Yeah, do you take them off the board of directors so they can't vote on that, but they still are a CA council rep? When
But the
what-
council rep is still allowed to appoint themselves, right?
It's the whole, no, the whole CA council has to appoint the the rep.
As a whole.
They appoint them to be reps. And then on the council, then they appoint the council as a whole to be on the board of directors. It's
So
a
it's as a whole, not individually. Okay. Well, let's talk about that offline, because it's not going to be in this bill for
I
sure.
leave it in the hands of the board. I'm just saying that I would love to see an answer to that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just be quiet while you guys discuss then. I mean, I just didn't want to get us.
No,
I
I
didn't
think
want
it
to
needs to
extend
be
our meeting.
resolved, and there is a lot of discussion about whether, and I'm not taking a position yet, but a lot of discussion, should you just eliminate the corporate board? And I know I'm gonna get cardiac arrest tonight on that one, and from some people, and so I'm saying I am not taking a position. I'm talking as an individual.
Okay.
But the discussion is, should we go back to what was in the Columbia Council representatives and not have the corporate board? But never mind, but
Or you
That's
could
a lot of-
appoint separate people as a corporate board. But wait, let me go back for 1 second.
it's a
Because I
lot.
just want to make you aware that there is a delegate who's interested in putting some amendments on this that I will be resisting. I don't want these amendments on whether or not they're good ideas or not. I don't think they belong in this bill. And one of them is to make all villages one person, one vote. Are you guys one person, one vote? Or you're one unit, one vote? Yeah, I think it's only King's Contrivance and River Hill that are one
River
person.
Hill, yeah.
Yeah, those two, because we're the last two villages, and I think was the, so she wants to do that, add that to it. I don't think that belongs here. It's worthy of conversation from my perspective, but I told her that I haven't gone around and worked that with the village boards to find out what people think. And so I'm uncomfortable with that being added to this bill. And then the other one was to change the timing of the CA elections, because there's a lot of conversation out there from some that the CA board should be elected at the same time as the gubernatorial election, or you guys would have to have it every year. So I'm not even sure how that would work. But change the timing of the elections so that they're at the same time as the gubernatorial election or the presidential election, or both. Again, I think
Every
that's,
4 years?
well, it'd be every 2 years if you did it with those two.
Oh, okay.
I am personally not that interested in doing that as part of this bill. I mean, she may propose it separately, but I
much.
do want to know if you guys think that that's something
Well,
I
that-
should be supporting. I just think that it's too much for this bill.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to my earlier question about whether this can even stand. That to me seems like a huge intrusion into, again, what are really private entities. Because
I got you.
in addition to changing our terms, we would also have to change, well, potentially have to change things like our fiscal years, tax filings, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs in
Unless,
this
yeah,
bill.
I mean, unless we have boards, not aligning with our fiscal years, and then budgeting gets all goofy and everything. I mean, I would just hearing the little bit, I would say I would be 100% opposed to that because I don't even know how we would figure that out or would want to.
Right. And so what I would do if I were putting those bills in, which I'm not, would be to go around to all the villages and get your thoughts on it. Is it something the villages want to do? I mean, I come from a village where we already have one person, one vote. But you know, changing the timing of the election, I think that has to be thought through. I think some people think that it would increase participation. I personally think it might. I don't know. I really don't have an opinion on it, but my initial thought is it could decrease participation because people get confused enough. They'll think, I already voted. Why are these people asking me to vote? Because I already did that. So I wouldn't want those two things to be confused, but please reach out to me if you
Well,
have some thoughts on
yeah.
that. I'm going to resist the amendments. And quite frankly, I might vote against my own bill if they get added, but I've worked with other delegates to be against that. But I'm open. I mean, I'm happy for people to write to me again. It's not an opinion about whether those are right or wrong. It's an opinion about how you need to work with CA villages before you start implementing something like that.
Well, and to me that feels, I mean, that feels bigger than CA and villages. To me, that goes to Maryland HOA law. And if we're really going to start dictating when HOAs can hold their elections, how long their terms can be, then it should just be universal across the state. I mean,
Right.
I know there's not a clear line, to
Yeah,
cross here, but to
right.
me, this crosses wherever that line is.
Yeah.
If someone's gonna go that far with
Yeah,
it.
and I don't have any legal opinion on that piece, right? I haven't sought an opinion on those because I'm not initially in support of adding them to my bill.
Lynn?
Yeah, I'm just getting confused. So none of this that we've been talking about.
None of those things are, right.
It goes into your bill. So this is all a side conversation.
Well, it is a side conversation, except I'm warning you that there is a delegate who says she's going to try to put those amendments on. I will resist those amendments and say, this sponsor of the bill does not want those amendments. She can file it as a separate bill if she wants, but I would recommend working with the villages like I usually do when I'm doing legislation that affects the villages. And I also don't know if it would withstand constitutional muster. So whether or not you like those ideas,
No,
I'm resisting putting them in a bill without the proper public process to, just letting you know, I'm hoping it wouldn't pass unless you guys are writing and saying we like them. My goal would be to resist those and not vote for the bill if somehow they got on, but I'm working it behind the scenes to make sure that they don't get on. For now, let her do them separately.
Yeah.
Ginny, you said you made your last comment.
I know, but she keeps raising and you.
I will stop talking.
This is the last point on that. One, I think it's brilliant if you want to get the village elections or CA elections, because you got to do both at the same time, involved in politics by having it in the political, presidential or governor's race. You're talking.
You like it?
Getting no, I'm
Or
saying
you don't like it?
that's how you get more political influence.
Oh, sorry. I
election.
understood.
Yeah, that's what I was driving at. Thanks for making me clarify that.
Okay.
Or you could always appoint a few from certain district. Never mind. Never mind. The second thing though is I think that we all understand the legislative process. You're having a hearing December 14th. The amendments, if they're proposed then,
I don't think they will, but
here's my point. If they're going to be proposed and they're proposed in the open so that people will hear them, then we need to hear that, we need to know it, and the boards need to be able to respond. If they're done when you guys meet in a work session, that complicates it because we don't know what's happening, and the boards, if they want to take a position, will not know it's happening to be able to let other legislators know, like what? So you know what I mean? And it's a very tight time frame before you vote, and it actually goes to a committee. So that's pretty serious.
right. Well, like I said, that's why I'm resisting those types of large amendments. I don't think they belong on a bill.
Yeah, you
added
are,
to a
but
bill.
if the others.
I've worked my colleagues, and like I said, I don't support the bill with those on it.
Yeah, no,
So-
I appreciate that, but I'm saying the others need to hear too from.
Yeah,
And
So-
and the timing doesn't always allow for that, which is scary.
I think that's a legitimate criticism of the delegation process that maybe we could discuss, or you guys could write about at some other point. I wouldn't be for tomorrow, of course. But I do think it's difficult. I actually think it's much harder to follow amendments on the state level than it is on the county level, having served for 12 years on the county council. I feel like that's a much longer, bigger discussion, but to the extent I know before we're voting on them, I will certainly let you know.
That would be great. And then we
While I
can,
know the board can't meet all together before then, you certainly can offer individual opinions about amendments.
and I can let my colleagues know so they can let their boards know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've told, I can't remember who I was meeting with the other day that I told.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to share that this could happen quickly. Of course, you always have. a
Happen quickly, but I have already called multiple colleagues to let them know that I will resist that.
No, thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to say I blame Oakland Mills for the fact that I keep talking because I think I'm a greater thinker for having grown up in Oakland Mills. That's all I have to say.
I guess
I'm
that's
not going to Oakland Mills. I lived in Jefferson, but it was close enough. I'm an Oakland Mills girl.
we ask the good questions.
You do, and we do. And I
Mhm.
feel like I learned that at Oakland Mills, so I'm just saying it's your fault.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We do appreciate you taking time out to join us and
Thank
also for paying attention to our agendas to know we were talking about this tonight.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna go so you guys can
Thank
talk amongst
you.
yourselves.
Okay,
you.
thank
And
you.
Sandy,
Happy
I'm gonna say-
holidays.
Sandy,
Happy
I'm gonna say
holidays.
you can't retire. I'll put that in
What?
the bill. I'm gonna say you can't retire. They asked for that in the bill.
Well, if you put it in there, I might reconsider. I'll be watching.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Okay.
So we probably should have amended the agenda once we knew Jen was coming, because I knew this would take more than the 10 minutes we allotted. I don't know. I mean, I want to try to get through this quickly since we've spent a lot of time asking questions. The way I'm feeling right now is I still don't know about a position on this one because the hearing is tomorrow. And there's still some, like we heard from Jen herself. Oh, these are some things to think about, or these are questions I'll have to ask and get back to you. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with it personally right now. Rebecca?
I like it. I like the intention of the bill. And I think that there's enough freedom for our village to figure it out. But I think it's really important. I think we saw that 2 years ago and we don't want that to happen again. And I think Jen, like she said, she's a good thinker. And I think she's going to work with us to get it written out. So I am very happy to write a letter of support for it tomorrow. Pause though. I need to go put my kids to bed because they've been watching TV for the past hour because I'm parenting alone tonight. So I'm going to put them to bed and then come back.
Okay. Bill?
Unless you think we're voting on something. and
Yeah,
need
that's
to
what I know.
hang
I want to
around.
make sure we have a quorum, which we do.
Okay.
Well,
Yes, my take is pretty much along the lines of Rebecca. I think that there's a lot that we would need to work out. It's local within the village. And we have been offered help that we could go to begin the process of figuring out exactly what we need to do. I think the other alternative is if we don't support it, whatever, that it could lead to another situation that we had a couple of years ago. And I think we need to put the stop to that. It might not be the best way to do it overall, but it's what we have in front of us. So I would support the bill and know that we would have work ahead of us to do. We can get help to do that. So my take would be I would support the bill.
So what about supporting it with the caveat that the state would provide legal assistance to the villages in setting up the compliance program, some language like that? My biggest concern is what I asked about. What's our liability and what's the cost to us? Because the big dollars are with CA, but we incur all the cost of electing that CA board.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Jonathan.
I like it too. And I go along with Bill and Rebecca. I agree. I would support this bill. I think it's a preventative measure. It's probably not perfect, But if we can limit our liability, I think that would be very important. And but I support it.
Yeah, and that's my hesitation. That's why I started with the I don't know, because you know, I'm one of the three who sees the checks we write to lawyers sometimes, and I just don't I don't want to be writing checks to lawyers because of this law. That's my only concern.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we go forward with supporting Jen's bill with the provision that we are going to get legal help from the state in determining how we actually implement that in preventing any liability on our part.
That's very good wording.
I'll second it.
Yes.
I said, okay, I'll third it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, 500. I guess I have some writing to do by tomorrow evening.
You're so good at it.
And I think this one's going to be short and sweet as well. I mean, I'm talking probably less than 1 page to cover both bills.
Yep.
Maybe 3 sentences each bill at most at this point.
I have
Okay.
a question on process. When they have this hearing tomorrow night, so then it still has to go to committee and then it still has to be voted on. So there are other times that we can change our testimony or, you know, add things, right? Or not right? I can't hear Jenny. I know it's.
I would think.
If you want. This is a hearing. It sounds like there's a very good chance because of the Board of Education bill, they will continue the hearing on the 15th. Maybe, maybe not. Then they listen, they get everything together, staff works on it, and then they have a meeting in Annapolis where they go over what amendments they might want to the bill, where they are on the bill, et cetera. Then they come back up here, I forget what month it is, on any other state legislation and get your input. But in terms of the local, they'll be working the process in Annapolis. They'll get it together and they will have a vote in Annapolis. That's what I meant about, yes, you can write to them all the time, et cetera. What that exact date is, they know what it is. I haven't looked that up, but there is a date for when they have to pass legislation if they want it from the delegation, if they want it to go into the House committee or the Senate committee or both. And then it gets a hearing there where you can testify. But let's face it, if it's been passed by the delegation, there's a courtesy thing that occurs, and it's very difficult to kill anything in a standing committee when the delegation is saying, hey, you know, this is a local.
Okay.
But you can get those dates by calling the staff person, what's her name, Abby? We got those emails from her for the delegation. She'll give you that right away. It's tight. That's what I was trying to say. It's really tight. Does that help any? No. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right, Ginny, want to go right into your report?
And I think I get the message. Yes, be brief. Okay. We worked on the budget. We voted to support not raising the cap or the annual charge. Okay, that was one thing. And and this is all just giving the staff some votes so that they can come in with a budget in January, which we can still change. You can have a say in that. You can still change it up until we vote February 23rd. I know it's sounding in some of the stuff you're hearing, it's over. You should have told us what you want now. We have a right and you have a right to have that budget change until the final vote February 23rd, or it can even be put off from then. That will get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm not advocating that. So just keep that in mind. The restrooms, I raised that because I wanted to put money in the budget. I wanted to put it under category 3 where there's $4 million of the 11 million. And I was assured, I was trying to get an answer in public. So you can listen to it on YouTube, the tape. Sandy probably already with her glass of wine and popcorn listened to it. I don't know. And we
In
were
bed with my iPods and my earpods and my iPad.
well, you were assured
must
you
know.
will fix your restroom in this budget. And I asked what category, I'm a doubting Thomas, category 3. Now that's the category has $4 million that is approved by the president, but he is on tape and he was actually doing this. When I said, are you sure? He's actually, I don't know if you saw that, he's doing this like, yes, yes, yes. Now, I also raised you don't have any questions about that, right? We just keep following it. Orchard Green Path. I said, okay, I'd like that also in category 3. Warren, Rebecca, the response, and everybody, the response I got was, we can't do it because the county hasn't, the state, they haven't done their part. So that's the answer I got. If we don't agree with that, and are you tearing your hair out, Warren, or you just?
I am. That's,
Well, all right, let me just suggest you listen to the YouTube and listen to what was said and tell me what action you want. I'm just trying to get things in, if not in writing, because that gets more and more difficult to get, but to get it in writing or on record. Okay, so please listen to that. That's
Okay.
in a nutshell. I'm not saying I'm accepting it. I'm saying I want to go back to you. I remember the first meeting with Sandy, Amy, you and I with the state. So this has been too many years as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, there are other things that probably should go in this budget in terms of maybe even raising capital $1 million more. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for that one too. Okay. Now, when you look at the January 12th work session that's coming up, a couple of things here. Sandy, I'm wondering if I brought this up to you, because I don't know if you can open, I don't think you can open a CA board thing. If I were to bring these and leave them in the office, would you be willing to make copies for the board or scan them or something so they'd see this? The agendas for January and February, would that work? Well, all right, let me just tell you a couple of things that are on it and then you tell me what to do. These are important things in the work session.
Yeah, it would work. I didn't know I was muted. Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Analysis of the draft general plan, focus on positive board statements. So we want to get some statement based on the general plan. How are we going to go about hearing from the county, et cetera? We're working on all these things. What will be the presentation that the residents can hear? If you have ideas on any of these as to who you think maybe should be a speaker, et cetera, that will better inform the public, let me know. C is Lake Elkhorn Stream Restoration Project. The general plan was 45 minutes. The Lake Elkhorn is 30. And the good old CA votes in village elections thing is up for 15 minutes again, because Wes said he didn't like the idea that Eric wrote it, but he wants to write it. It's a long story. The point being that we said we have got to get this on the agenda. You need to know what's going to happen with CA votes, and we want it done and voted on at the latest, at the voting board meeting, which is January 26th. So Sandy, did they send you anything finally?
We met in a Zoom call, the managers and Wes.
All the village managers.
Well,
Okay.
everyone that attended. I'm sure there was 2 that didn't attend, but that's not our problem. But he did come back and say that they would like to propose that the CA votes would be counted for the purposes of a quorum only, which is what we do. So everyone who needs their vote felt like that was what we want, but then there's 2 villages, I guess it's Kings and River Hill, that don't count corporate votes, but then doesn't matter to them. So that was what he said he'd like to propose, and we all supported that.
Sandy, did you get anything in writing?
No.
All
But
right.
he didn't say he would send us anything in writing. I guess he's going back now to your board.
I would like to suggest that the village managers give some thought to asking that they get it in writing so they know exactly what's being said before they say they support anything, because it's going to come to us and we're going to ask what the village managers think. And if I'm going to hear that you're all supportive, but you have not actually read the document, that will raise a concern for me, and I don't want this thing being delayed. So if there's any way the village managers that were there can say, excuse me, it was supposed to be a document in writing. A document consists of half a page is all.
Well, I think he floated it by us without having the document in writing, and now he's going to write the document.
Okay, maybe you want to ask, when are you going to see it so your board can review it? Because you have a right to do this, because this is already the 13th. Yeah, we have time, but you know, the longer it gets close to that, it's important for us to get feedback from the village boards and the village managers, that and election committee, if you want. That didn't go over too big when I said I consulted or, you know, got feedback from the election committee, but I think it's up to you guys. All right, but I'd really appreciate if I'll talk to my other colleagues and ask them to do the same thing. Okay, and that will be voted on hopefully the 26th, and the board statement on the general plan, the 20th. Lynn, maybe Phil has some ideas on that. Bill, you probably have ideas. February 9th, the work session will consist, they always consist of the budget. That's, you expect that on there. And B is for 50 minutes, strategic direction on CA play areas. We've changed the tot lot playground thing to play areas because it could be something else that you want to give an opinion on in your village. That's, oh, it's always open space, but that sort of doesn't fit in the definition of tot lot or playground or whatever. So we're trying to allow for more feedback on special areas in a that the villages want to talk about or residents want to talk about. So that'll be 50 minutes. I'm trying to get them to get some experts, excuse me, in other areas that have done creative things. I'm having a lot of trouble with that, as those of you that listen to the board meeting may have heard. But if anybody else has an idea, like, boy, the best tot lot I've ever seen, and some of you have sent me some stuff, is in so-and-so, you know, just help us out with that. Or feel free to sign up for Resident Speak Out. That would be wonderful if you made your comments at Resident Speak Out on the 9th of February, and just said what you thought about how we're handling tot lots. There's rascals are in the budget. The budget is for, I think it's 6 tot lots at $511,000, I believe. All right, I think those are the, you know, the budget's most of what's going on here, but there's some, I think, some really good stuff, exciting stuff that at least I'm excited. That's it. I won't say anymore. I said that before, but I
Thanks,
really.
Ginny. Sandy, are we under any requirement to approve the financials at this meeting versus the first one in January?
It would be helpful if we could.
Okay, has
I could be very
everyone,
quick. I sent him ahead of time.
I was going to ask, has everyone read through them? Because I feel like it's getting too late in the night if we have to walk through and describe everything. But if everyone has read them and comfortable and Sandy can do a quick presentation, I'm okay with that. I just think if we really need to go through them, I think it would be more responsible to do that at an earlier time at the next meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at them?
I did.
Okay,
Yes,
take it away.
but I still vote an earlier time at the next meeting.
Well,
Because we still have session after this, right?
That should hopefully be quick, but Sandy, quick.
okay, well,
If
they're
everyone's
cut and
read them.
dry. Our
In
financials are
fact, why
based.
don't we just go by exception? Does anyone have any questions for Sandy, or did anyone see any items that need explanation?
Why is there 2 janitorial wages listed?
Janitorial wages. Oh, it meant, I'm sorry, this, I will change it. It should be cleaning, a different name.
Okay,
But I'll change that and redo it before I send it to Jonathan. It's like cleaning. So this is the janitorial wages is when when our staff does courtyard setups and breakdowns for events, we pay them separate from their salary for setting up 200 chairs in the courtyard and taking them down. So that adds up when we have rentals.
sure.
And we budget kind of on a 4-quarter budget. We don't think, oh, you know, for that. So the next quarter, it'll probably be break even. And the janitorial wages also is for Judd, his cleaning and setup, his breakdown. So he's not part of the wages, and it's really cleanup, setup, and breakdown. I know the official name in front of me for the quarter. So when we have more use of the building, that is going to go up this quarter, but probably not next quarter or the quarter after that.
That makes sense. Okay, thank
for
you.
pointing that out. So I definitely will change that. Rename. Oh, I'll tell you what the name is. I have it right here. It's called janitorial expenses, and the other one is called wages. So it's very similar.
That's a good catch by Warren. I guess I'm so used to seeing it that I didn't even notice that
Yeah, it's
one
just
wasn't
the
expenses
word
and the other was wages. Yeah.
expenses, yeah, and it's just different pots of money for different people. The same pot of money, different accounts.
So it looks good to me besides that. That was my only question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good work.
Are there any other questions?
The bottom line is that year to date, we are ahead of budget by $62,000, but it doesn't not mean anything till we get to like the third quarter, because we break down pretty much evenly across the board. So we do boom business in the spring and summer, and then rentals and everything decline. So that's where we're at. So I just need any more questions or a vote. I mean, it's really, they take our financials and they put them into these spreadsheets. The accountant does it. And then CA audits it all.
All right, I'll call a vote. Is there a motion to approve the second quarter financials? There's a motion from Bill. Is there a second? There's a second from Rebecca. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0.
And I'll give my other 2 minutes to Brigida. So we're moving right along.
Sorry, took me a minute to find the unmute button. So just a quick note, as Sandy mentioned, our rentals will slow down. We have our last rental of 2022. This Thursday, a holiday party for a company. And I would say that we have definitely really come back from COVID. People don't really seem to give it too much thought anymore. They're hosting their events as normal. And the other thing is we also have our final community event this Saturday, as you all have heard. So I will be doing kind of a recap, looking at the budgets that we've had for this year and thought for next year, but also doing a photo recap of all of our events. So I'll put that up on our page just so you guys can kind of see everything that we've been doing. And I'll keep that short as well, since I know it's late.
Is that
Thank
4 to 7, 4 to 8, Saturday?
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right,
see you
thank you,
there.
Brigida. All right, committee reports. Anything housing, Bill?
Yes, very quickly. We have the Verona Apartments in the village. There's Verona South across from the Exxon lot, Verona North next to Talbot Springs Elementary. Currently, they're owned as a one entity, and the financing on them comes at 10 years at the end of 2023. At that point, the Housing Commission can make changes. So in September, I had a meeting with Jonathan, myself, Sandy, Ginny, and Jervis Thornton, met with Peter Engel and his staff. Peter Engel is the Housing Commission Executive Director. And what we did, we talked about the future of Verona. And what we did with Jervis, who's a fantastic design architect with a Rouse company for 40 years, he showed them alternative redevelopment of those sites with apartments and with townhouses. And that alignment is consistent with our Village Center Community Plan, the Village Center Feasibility Study, the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. And Peter was very happy with that because he said, I'm just gathering ideas. It's all ideas right now, but I'm open to any and all ideas you have. He asked some more questions about, could you show me this? Could you show me that? And so what Jervis did was, after a month or so of redoing some drawings, a 3D mock-up, et cetera, met with Peter at his office and went over those drawings with him to show him just different ideas, layouts of apartments and townhouses. So I just wanted to update the board on that. There are no plans from the Housing Commission whatsoever. These are strictly ideas that we presented to the Housing Commission, and that's the sum of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Terrific.
Lynn, anything architecture?
Not really architecture. This is just something that I've noticed in the past couple of weeks, actually, a few weeks, as I drive around to look at different properties. And it seems that we are once again getting trucks parked along our roads, big trucks parked overnight, largely up around the middle school. And last night when I came down, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and there were a couple of trucks parked, and one of them had all of his lights on. And so I don't know, just want to call it to people's attention, because, you start off with one, and then it becomes two, and then it becomes, a bunch more. And it's at Kilimanjaro, right down by the Cinnamon Tree, but also more towards the area with the middle school. And that's it. I don't have
Call the non-emergency, because once they're there over the 6 hours, they get cited, as long as that's zone residential along the middle school. I don't know for sure, but the police will know.
And I'll call Officer Paul, because when he's on duty, he's very good about going out too. I can let him know in an email tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sandy.
All right, education. Oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Sandy, real quick. I've noticed a cab to a tractor trailer parked on Farewell this past week or two between Woodblock and Saddlebag, I think is the next street up. Okay, thank you.
Wow, there's not much space on that street.
Mm.
All right, education reported out at the last meeting and isn't meeting in December, so nothing there, other than the bill we already talked about. Warren, anything public space?
No, I don't have anything.
All right. Oh, anyone have any bulletin board items? We'll wish each other happy holidays after the closed session. All right, we do need to go into a closed session to talk about matters pertaining to employees and personnel. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Motion from Bill. Is there a second from Warren? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. Okay, I'm gonna put everyone but
Well, we could just.
and I am resuming recording because we are officially out of closed meeting, and there is Sandy rejoining us.
What time
Okay,
is it?
so it's
9:29.
well, it's 9:28 when we came out of the closed meeting.
Okay.
So I'll fill out the form probably tomorrow morning at this point, because it's late and I still need to write those 3 sentences of testimony. For everyone out there in resident land, none of whom are still here, the purpose of our meeting was to discuss issues pertaining to personnel. The village board met and reviewed bonus information for the staff and made decisions about end of year staff bonuses. And with that, I wish everyone the happiest of holidays. As Ginny asked and we answered, we are not having our usual 2nd December meeting because I don't think anyone wants to show up between Christmas and New Year's.
Nope.
So I hope everyone has very happy holidays. Get some rest, walk away from this village board stuff for a while. Well, maybe after tomorrow, after we send in the testimony, and come back nice and refreshed in January for whatever we face then, because I'm sure it'll be something.
Good night, everybody, and
Good
happy
night, everyone.
holidays.
Do we need a
Tim.
motion to adjourn?
Good point, Lynn.
No,
Motion-
well, in the old days, I used to just bang the gavel and say we're adjourned. Now I usually just say we're adjourned.
Okay. Works
Happy
for me.
holidays.
Happy
Happy
Hanukkah, Merry
holidays.
Christmas, Happy New
Happy
Year.
holidays.
Saturday in
you.
the courtyard.
You got it.
4 to 8, right? Happy holidays, everybody.
I'm